The shocking betrayal. The wedding invitation that changed everything. Welcome to my channel, Heartfire Obsession. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. Ivy Martinez held it in trembling hands as rain hammered against her apartment window. She'd recognize that handwriting anywhere. Elegant, precise, the kind of penmanship that came from private schools and country clubs. The same handwriting that had once filled love notes tucked into her locker, scrawled promises on napkins during late-night diners, signed birthday cards with "Forever Yours." But this wasn't a love note. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Marcus James Holloway and Miss Charlotte Eve Pemberton. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Marcus, her Marcus, was marrying someone else, and she'd found out from an invitation. The ghost of yesterday. Ivy's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I thought you should know before the whole town starts talking. He's been engaged for 6 months. I'm sorry. Sarah." 6 months. 6 months ago, Marcus had looked into Ivy's eyes in this very apartment and said he needed space to figure things out. 6 months ago, he'd kissed her forehead and promised they weren't over, just pausing. 6 months ago, she'd believed him because loving Marcus Holloway was the only thing she'd ever been certain about. They'd met when she was 17, a scholarship student at Ashford Academy working weekends at her aunt's flower shop to make ends meet. He was the golden boy, quarterback, valedictorian, son of the town's most powerful family. Everyone said they didn't belong together. She'd almost believed it herself, until the night he'd shown up at the shop at closing time, drenched from rain, and said, "I don't care what anyone thinks. I choose you." For 7 years she'd believed that. The first crack in the armor. Ivy opened her laptop with shaking hands and typed Charlotte Pemberton's name into the search bar. The woman who stared back from the screen was everything Ivy wasn't. Blonde where Ivy was dark, polished where Ivy was authentic, connected where Ivy was self-made. Charlotte's family owned half the commercial real estate in 3 counties. Her Instagram showed a life of charity galas, yacht parties, and Marcus's arm around her waist in every photo for the past. Ivy's stomach dropped. 8 months. They'd been together 8 months, which meant Marcus had been with Charlotte for 2 months before he'd asked Ivy for space, before he'd kissed her and lied, before he'd let her believe they had a future. The rage hit her like a physical force, hot and electric. Not the clean anger of sudden betrayal, but the festering kind that came from months of manipulation. She'd spent half a year waiting for him, turning down dates, defending him to friends who gently suggested maybe he wasn't coming back. She'd been loyal to a ghost while he'd been building a life with someone else. Her phone rang. Marcus's name lit up the screen. She answered. The voice of a stranger. Ivy. His voice was smooth, controlled. The voice of someone who'd practiced this conversation. "I heard you got the invitation." We thought, it was better you heard it officially rather than through gossip. How thoughtful. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, too calm. 8 months, Marcus? A pause. It's complicated. Explain it to me. Make me understand how you looked me in the eye and lied for months. I never meant to hurt you. The words came quick, rehearsed. What we had was real, but you have to understand, Charlotte and I, our families, the business connections. It makes sense in ways that we didn't? Ivy finished, acid in her throat. Just say it. I wasn't good enough. The flower shop girl with the single mom and the state school degree. I didn't fit into your world. That's not fair. What's not fair, Ivy said, her voice dropping to something dangerous, is that you made me believe I mattered. That love was enough. That you chose me. I did choose you. For a while, Stop. She was standing now, pacing her small apartment. You don't get to rewrite this. You used me. You kept me on the side while you built your perfect life with someone appropriate. Ivy, please, tell me one thing. Her reflection stared back from the darkened window, and she barely recognized the woman looking back. Did Charlotte know about me? The silence stretched too long. She knew, Ivy whispered. She knew, And you told her I didn't matter, that I was just... What? A phase? A secret? It wasn't like that. What was I, Marcus? What was I to you? His voice changed, colder now. You're upset. I understand, but Charlotte and I are getting married. I'm calling because I want you to know there are no hard feelings on our end. You're welcome to come to the wedding if... Ivy laughed, a sharp sound that didn't sound like her at all. No hard feelings? You're inviting me to watch you marry someone else after you destroyed me? Destroyed is dramatic. We dated, Ivy. People move on. The casual dismissal of 7 years shattered something in her chest. Did you ever love me? Of course I did. But we were young, and... Goodbye, Marcus. She ended the call and stood in the darkness of her apartment, rain still hammering the windows. Her hands had stopped shaking. The tears she'd expected didn't come. Instead, something cold and clear settled in her chest. Marcus Holloway had made a mistake. Not in leaving her, she could have survived heartbreak. His mistake was thinking she'd fade quietly into his past, a footnote in the story of his charmed life. The seed of revenge. Ivy picked up the wedding invitation again, studying every detail. The venue, the Holloway family estate. The date, 2 weeks away. The guest list would be the who's who of the county's elite, everyone Marcus's family needed to impress. She opened her laptop and began to type, fingers flying across the keyboard. By midnight, she'd made a list. By 2 a.m., she'd made a plan. By dawn, she was booking a flight and making calls to people she hadn't spoken to in years. Marcus wanted her to disappear? To pretend she never mattered? She'd give him a wedding he'd never forget. And when it was over, everyone in that perfect, polished world of his would know exactly who Ivy Martinez was and what it cost to break her heart. The invitation sat on her desk, a declaration of war she fully intended to win. What will Ivy do? How will she crash Marcus's perfect wedding? The revenge is just beginning. Heartbreak and revenge. The woman in the shadows. The Holloway estate gleamed under strings of white lights, a palace of old money and older secrets. Ivy watched from across the street, hidden in the shadows of a delivery van marked with the name of the catering company. She'd been watching for 3 hours now, studying patterns, memorizing faces, waiting for her moment. Getting hired hadn't been hard. A well-placed bribe to the understaffed catering manager, a fake reference from a company that didn't exist, and suddenly Ivy Martinez was just another server in black and white, invisible to the people who mattered. Invisible was exactly what she needed. The players take their positions. Martinez. The catering manager's sharp voice cut through the prep kitchen. You're on champagne duty for the ceremony. White gloves, silver tray, smile but don't speak unless spoken to. These people don't actually see you, so don't give them a reason to. Perfect. Ivy pulled on the white gloves and caught her reflection in a polished serving tray. She'd changed her hair, shorter, darker, styled differently than Marcus would remember. Subtle makeup, nothing dramatic. She looked sophisticated, professional, forgettable. Except she'd never been good at being forgettable. The other servers rushed around her, stressed and focused. None of them knew her real name. None of them would remember her face tomorrow. She'd made sure of it. Cash payments, no digital trail, a fake ID that would dissolve like smoke after tonight. 5 minutes to guest arrival. Someone shouted. Ivy's heart hammered, but her hands remained steady as she arranged champagne flutes on her tray. She'd spent 2 weeks planning this moment. 2 weeks of sleepless nights, obsessive research, and cold, calculating rage that had transformed her grief into something sharper. She wasn't here for revenge in the way Marcus would expect. She wasn't going to make a scene or crash the ceremony with a dramatic speech. That was amateur, forgettable, the kind of thing that would make her look desperate. No, what Ivy had planned was so much worse. The first piece falls. The guests began arriving in German cars and designer dresses. Ivy recognized faces from Marcus's social media, Charlotte's socialite friends, his father's business associates, the mayor, a state senator. Everyone who mattered in their glittering world gathered to witness the union of two powerful families. Ivy moved through the crowd like water, offering champagne, smiling vacantly, listening to everything. Did you hear Charlotte's father basically bought Marcus's company out of bankruptcy? A woman in Chanel whispered to her companion. Saved the whole family, apparently. This wedding is as much a merger as a marriage. Ivy filed that away. Interesting. She moved closer to a group of men smoking cigars near the garden entrance. James was smart to secure the Pemberton connection, one said. Another year and Holloway Industries would have gone under. Charlotte's dowry alone covered most of their debts. Poor girl doesn't know she's been sold, another laughed. Marcus is good at playing the part, though. Should have been an actor. Ivy's grip tightened on her tray, but her face remained neutral. She drifted away, gathering information like weapons. The bride's secret. In the bridal suite, Charlotte Pemberton sat in a cloud of white silk and tulle, her face a mask of bridal perfection. Ivy had volunteered to deliver champagne to the suite, and now she stood in the corner, practically invisible as the bride's friends fussed over her. "You're doing the right thing," one bridesmaid said, though her voice held doubt. Charlotte's reflection in the mirror looked haunted. "Am I?" "He loves you." "Does he?" Charlotte's laugh was bitter. "He loves my father's money. He loves what this marriage means for his family. But me?" She touched her engagement ring like it burned. "Sometimes I wonder if he even sees me." Another bridesmaid squeezed her shoulder. "Cold feet are normal. This isn't cold feet." Charlotte's voice dropped. "Last week I found letters, old love letters, hidden in his desk, from someone named Ivy. Dozens of them, dated up until 8 months ago." Ivy's heart stopped. She'd written those letters. Every one of them, pages of her heart poured out in ink. "Did you ask him about her?" "He said she was nobody. Just a girl from his past who couldn't let go. He said she was dealt with." Charlotte's voice hardened, like I was supposed to be grateful he'd cleaned up his mess before marrying me. Maybe she was just. "He kept the letters," Charlotte interrupted. "If she was nobody, why did he keep them?" The room fell silent. Ivy stood frozen, tray gripped so tightly her knuckles were white beneath the gloves. This wasn't in her plan. Charlotte wasn't supposed to be a victim, too. She was supposed to be the enemy, the woman who'd stolen Ivy's future. But Charlotte wasn't the thief. She was just another woman caught in Marcus's web. A shift in strategy. 5 minutes to ceremony. Someone called from the hallway. The bridesmaids scattered, leaving Charlotte alone with her reflection. Ivy should have left. Her plan didn't require staying. But something made her hesitate. "You're still here?" Charlotte's eyes met Ivy's in the mirror. Yes, miss. Do you need anything?" Charlotte studied her for a long moment. "Have you ever loved someone who made you feel invisible?" Ivy's carefully constructed facade cracked. "Yes." "What did you do?" The question hung in the air between them. Ivy should have deflected, should have stayed in character. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'm still figuring that out." Charlotte stood, her dress rustling like whispers. "My father told me that love is a luxury and marriage is a business. He said I should be practical." She touched her veil. "But I keep thinking about those letters. About a woman who loved my fiancé enough to fill pages with her heart. And I wonder if she knows he's marrying someone else today." Ivy's throat tightened. "Maybe she knows. Does she hate me?" The question was so raw, so vulnerable, that Ivy couldn't lie. She did. But maybe, she paused, choosing words carefully. "Maybe she's starting to realize you're not the villain in this story." Charlotte's eyes glistened. "Then who is?" Before Ivy could answer, the door burst open. Marcus's mother swept in, all pearls and perfume and barely contained anxiety. "Charlotte, darling, it's time." Charlotte's mask slipped back into place. She nodded, straightened her shoulders, and walked toward the door. But as she passed Ivy, she paused. "Whatever you're planning," she whispered so only Ivy could hear, "make it count." Then she was gone, leaving Ivy standing alone in the bridal suite, her entire plan dissolving like smoke. The ceremony begins. The garden had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, strings of lights turning the evening into magic. 300 guests sat in pristine rows, waiting. Ivy took her position along the side with the other servers, champagne tray ready for the post-ceremony toast. From here, she had a perfect view of the altar, where Marcus stood in his tuxedo, confident and radiant. She'd thought seeing him would hurt more. Instead, she felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt clarity. Marcus wasn't the man she'd loved. That man had never existed. He was a performance, a carefully crafted illusion of what she'd wanted to see. The real Marcus was the one who'd kept her letters while courting someone else, who'd called her nobody, who'd built his future on broken promises and strategic marriages. The music swelled. Charlotte appeared at the end of the aisle, beautiful and tragic in her designer gown. Ivy pulled out her phone, hidden in her apron pocket. One text to send, one carefully crafted message that would unravel everything, but her finger hovered over the send button. Charlotte's words echoed in her mind, "Make it count." The choice. Revenge had seemed so simple 2 weeks ago. Expose Marcus's lies, ruin his wedding, make him pay for every tear she'd cried. But watching Charlotte walk toward a future built on manipulation and debt, watching a woman who deserved better bind herself to a man who saw her as a transaction, Ivy realized revenge came in many forms. The ceremony began. The priest spoke words about love and commitment that rang hollow. Marcus's voice was steady as he recited vows that meant nothing. Charlotte's trembled slightly, but she pushed through. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The garden held its breath. Ivy's finger moved. But not to send the message she'd planned. She typed something new. Something better. Something that would destroy Marcus in ways he'd never expect. And sent it to Charlotte. Charlotte's phone, hidden in her bouquet, vibrated once. Ivy watched her stiffen, saw her glance down at the screen, saw her face transform from resigned to shocked to something that looked almost like hope. The bride looked up, scanned the crowd, and her eyes locked with Ivy's across the garden. Then Charlotte smiled, not the practiced smile of a society bride, but something wild and real and dangerous. "Actually," Charlotte said, her voice clear and strong, "I have something to say." The garden exploded into chaos, and Ivy's real revenge was only just beginning. The ultimate payback. The unraveling. Charlotte's voice cut through the shocked silence like a blade. "I need to tell the truth. Right here, right now, before we make the biggest mistake of our lives." Marcus's face went white. "Charlotte, what are you?" "I'm calling off the wedding." The crowd erupted. Gasps, whispers, the scraping of chairs as guests half rose in confusion. Marcus's mother clutched her pearls. Charlotte's father stood, face purple with rage. But Charlotte was looking at Ivy. "Someone sent me information 30 seconds ago," Charlotte continued, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Information I should have had months ago." Ivy's heart pounded. The message she'd sent wasn't what Charlotte expected. It wasn't exposing Marcus's affair with Ivy or destroying his reputation with scandal. It was something far more valuable: financial records, bank statements, emails between Marcus and Charlotte's father. Proof that Marcus had been systematically stealing from his own company and planning to use Charlotte's family wealth to cover his debts and fund a lifestyle she'd never agreed to support. Ivy had spent 2 weeks hacking into systems, calling in favors from her tech-savvy friends, gathering evidence. Not to shame Marcus publicly for breaking her heart, that was too small, too personal. She'd gone bigger. She'd found his real crimes. "Marcus Holloway is a fraud," Charlotte said, her voice growing stronger, "and I have proof." The dominoes fall. Charlotte pulled out her phone, projecting the documents Ivy had sent onto the large screens meant for wedding photos. The crowd watched in stunned silence as numbers scrolled past. Embezzlement, falsified reports, plans to access Charlotte's trust fund without her knowledge. "You investigated me?" Marcus's carefully controlled mask cracked. "Charlotte, this is insane. Someone is trying to. Someone is trying to save me from marrying a liar, Charlotte interrupted. Someone who actually cares whether I spend my life with a man who sees me as a bank account. Marcus's father stood, trying to regain control. This is preposterous. These documents are clearly fabricated. They're not. A new voice rang out. Ivy turned to see a man in an FBI jacket stepping forward from the back of the crowd. We've been investigating Holloway Industries for 6 months. This wedding was supposed to give us time to build our case, but it seems someone beat us to it. The garden descended into chaos. Photographers snapped pictures. Guests pulled out phones. Marcus's lawyer appeared from somewhere, whispering urgently in his ear. Ivy slipped backward into the shadows. Her part in this almost done. Almost. The confrontation. She was almost to the service entrance when a hand grabbed her arm. Marcus, his tuxedo disheveled, his perfect hair falling across his forehead, his eyes wild. This was you. It wasn't a question. Ivy, what have you done? She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. I gave Charlotte what you never gave me. The truth. You've destroyed me, no. Ivy pulled her arm free. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. I loved you. His voice broke. Everything I did because I had no choice. The company was failing, my family needed. You had a choice, Ivy said quietly. You could have told me the truth. You could have said you needed to marry for money instead of letting me believe we had a future. You could have been honest. Would you have understood? No. She smiled, sad and final. But I would have grieved and moved on. Instead, you made me waste months waiting for a ghost. You made me doubt myself, question my worth. You taught me that love wasn't enough, that I wasn't enough. That's what I can't forgive. Marcus reached for her. Ivy, please. If you ever loved me, I did love you. But the man I loved never existed. She stepped back. Goodbye, Marcus. The aftermath. 3 days later, Ivy sat in Charlotte Pemberton's penthouse apartment, drinking wine and watching news coverage of Marcus's arrest. The FBI had moved fast once Charlotte provided Ivy's evidence. Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, the charges kept mounting. Thank you, Charlotte said quietly. For the warning. You didn't have to call off the wedding so dramatically, Ivy replied. You could have just left. And let him walk away unpunished? Let him move on to his next victim? Charlotte shook her head. No, he needed to face consequences, real ones. They sat in comfortable silence, 2 women who'd both loved and been betrayed by the same man, except they hadn't loved the same man. They'd loved the version of himself Marcus had sold them, different performances for different audiences. What will you do now? Ivy asked. Charlotte smiled. My father's cutting me off, says I humiliated the family. Marcus's assets are frozen. The society papers are having a field day. She raised her glass. And I've never felt freer in my life. Freedom is terrifying, Ivy admitted. And exhilarating. Charlotte's eyes gleamed. I'm thinking of starting over. Maybe going back to school. I always wanted to be a lawyer, but my father said it was beneath me. She laughed. Turns out, knowing how to read contracts might have saved me from marrying a criminal, the price of revenge. A week after the wedding that never was, Ivy received a visitor at her flower shop. A lawyer, expensive suit, serious expression. Miss Martinez, Marcus Holloway is claiming you hacked into private systems to obtain privileged information. He's threatening legal action. Ivy had expected this. Tell Mr. Holloway that if he pursues charges against me, I have several more hard drives full of information I didn't give to the FBI, including evidence of his affair with his college roommate's wife, his drug use, and the time he tried to bribe a city official. The lawyer's expression didn't change. I see. And do you have this evidence? I don't need to. But Marcus doesn't know that. She smiled. Tell him to take his settlement and disappear. Otherwise, I'll make sure his name is mud everywhere he goes. The lawyer nodded and left. Ivy never heard from Marcus again. The unexpected love. 6 months later, Ivy was rearranging roses when Charlotte walked into the shop. a tall, handsome woman in a pantsuit beside her. Ivy. This is Dana, my girlfriend. Charlotte beamed. We met in business school. Turns out, getting dumped at my own wedding was the best thing that ever happened to me. Ivy laughed, genuinely happy for her. I'm glad. We're opening a consulting firm, Charlotte continued. Helping women get out of bad relationships, financial planning, legal advice. I want you to be our first client. I don't need. Yes, you do. Charlotte placed a folder on the counter. Marcus's family paid a quiet settlement to avoid further scandal. $500,000 tax-free. And I made sure your name was on the check, not his. You earned it. Ivy stared at the numbers, then at Charlotte. I didn't do it for money. I know. You did it because someone needed to stop him. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be compensated for your work. Charlotte squeezed her hand. Use it. Expand the shop. Go back to school. Travel. Whatever you want. You gave me my freedom. Let me help give you yours. The true victory. A year later, Ivy Martinez stood in front of her second flower shop location, a beautiful storefront in the historic district. Charlotte had helped her secure the lease. Dana had handled the legal paperwork. And Ivy had done the rest, built her business from the ground up. No shortcuts, no compromises. She dated a few people, nothing serious yet. She was learning to trust again. Slowly. She was learning that love didn't have to hurt, didn't have to diminish her, didn't have to come with lies and manipulation. Sometimes she thought about Marcus, wondered where he was. Last she'd heard, he'd moved to another state, working a middle management job under an assumed name. His family had disowned him. His reputation was ashes. She'd won. Completely, devastatingly, permanently. But the victory wasn't in his downfall. It was in her freedom. She'd learned that revenge didn't have to be cruel. Sometimes the best revenge was building a life so good, so full, so authentically yours that the person who hurt you became irrelevant. A footnote. A cautionary tale you told at dinner parties. The final scene. On a crisp autumn evening, Ivy closed her shop and found an envelope tucked under the door. No return address. Inside, a single card with handwriting she recognized. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better. You were never nobody. You were everything. And I was too broken to see it. I hope you're happy. You earned it. Ivy read it once, then fed it to the shredder beside her desk. Some apologies came too late. Some wounds healed better without closure. She locked the shop, walked to her car, and drove home to her apartment. Bigger now, in a better neighborhood, filled with plants and art and evidence of a life lived on her own terms. Her phone buzzed. A text from Charlotte. Drinks tomorrow? Dana wants to introduce you to her sister. Ivy smiled and typed back, I'm free. And tell your girlfriend to stop trying to set me up, no promises. She thinks you'd be perfect together. Maybe she would be. Maybe she wouldn't. But either way, Ivy Martinez was done waiting for someone else to write her story. She was the author now. And the next chapter? It was going to be spectacular. The revenge was complete. The heart was healed. And the real love story was just beginning, the one where Ivy learned to love herself enough to never settle again.